Hey girl, welcome back to another episode of Motherhood with Mama Love Grounds. I'm your host, Ara Lee, a birth keeper, postpartum caretaker, mother, and wife. I work with families locally in Ventura County as well as virtually all around the world. If you don't know your choices, you have none. This podcast is my way of spreading the word and sharing the knowledge so that you can make powerful choices from a place of knowledge, love, and sovereignty. We'll unpack everything related to motherhood under the sun, one woman's story at a time. If there's a topic you'd like to have explored or a guest you'd like to have on, please submit that using the request link below in the description so that we can try to make it happen. Now, let's move on to today's journey. Hello, beautiful people. The journey I would like to take you on today is with Isadora. She is a co-sleeping expert, and she teaches families how to co-sleep and bed share in the safest way possible. She has a very relatable story, and I think that she is such a great expert to have on the show today because I know that we're in the era of breastfeeding our babies and wanting to bed share and do things to be closer to them. And there's still a lot of fear that can come up when we make those decisions. So it's nice to have someone like her with the stats to back it up, to encourage us and help us and give us some peace of mind as we navigate everything. So the one thing I will say before we get into it is that you are the expert and authority of your baby and your body. So please always consult your own intuition when making any decisions related to you and your family. Nothing anyone ever does or says should ever replace that. So with that in mind, let's get into the episode. Here we go. Good morning, Isadora.
Good morning. Good afternoon for me.
Yes, good afternoon for you. It's 4 a.m. for me. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited to talk to you about co-sleeping. It's something that for me, there was a lot of fear around that I wasn't expecting. So when I came across your page, it changed everything. So I would just love to hear from you how you got into this and what your experience has been.
Okay, so I think I started more or less like a lot of us, with that fear, not understanding anything about co-sleeping. I come from a very loving family, but it just wasn't a thing in my house. It was my mom just put all of us. I'm from a family of 5 siblings, and we were all just put in a crib to sleep. My mom even left me to cry. She openly told me that, oh, we just leave you to cry for a little bit. You're fine. So, and I mean, she is the most loving, affectionate. So it didn't affect our relationship in any way, but it was just what she did at the time.
Yeah.
And when I had my first baby, I just thought that's what you do. You just put your baby in a crib. So I, prepared the whole nursery for him and had a lovely crib and, all of those things, the changing table, all of those things that you do when you're having a new baby. And I was adamant that he was going to sleep there. So I knew from the information that I had from midwives that I had to sleep with my baby in the same room for those first few months, for the first 6 months. And then I had this idea that I had to move him to his room after 6 months. So obviously it's not a deadline, but for me, and I think for a lot of moms, they feel like, okay, they have to stay in your room for those first few months, but then you kind of have to really move them and get them sleeping independently around 6 months. And I think it got to around 6 months. My baby, he was just one of those babies that he refused the crib. He would not sleep in the crib. And honestly, I tried. I tried so hard. I would stand next to his crib and I would try the entire night. He used to wake up 10 to 15 times a night. Anytime I put him in the crib, he hit the mattress, he would be awake. The moment he hit the mattress, he'd be awake. Then I pick him up again. He'd fall asleep in my arms immediately, straight away. And then I felt, okay, he's asleep. A few minutes later, try again, wake him up again. And that cycle continued for the entire night. It
Yeah.
got to a point that I was just like, I just can't do this anymore. I went inside the crib. So I remember Googling what the weight limit on the crib was, because I just thought I have to go inside because there is no other way. So I went inside, tried sleeping with him in there, tried taking him, bought a really expensive rocking chair because I thought, if it's a very comfortable one, I'm going to be spending a lot of time in the rocking chair with him, which is crazy because it's not safe to sleep in a rocking chair with a baby. We know that the risks increase dramatically if you sleep on a rocking chair or on a sofa with your baby. The risks are much, much higher.
Mm.
But in my mind, I thought I was keeping my baby safer because he wasn't in my bed. And for me, the bed was off limits. So I could not bring him to my bed, but he was fine on a rocking chair if I was holding him. Or I would take him to the living room and I would put the television on and think that I would stay awake this way. If I put the television on, I can stay awake. And it didn't work, obviously. I was falling asleep. It was 2 a.m. I was breastfeeding, full of, oxytocin and all of those breastfeeding hormones. It's obviously the perfect recipe for falling asleep.
Yeah.
So obviously, I would fall asleep with him in those much more dangerous situations than it would have been to bring him to my bed in a safely prepared bed. But I didn't know I could do that. I did
Yeah.
not know. My husband at the time, he was just very against it as well. He
Hmm.
also felt the same. No, it's not safe.
Yeah.
So at some point, I brought him to my bed because I felt I don't know what to do anymore. I cannot carry on this way. So I'd bring him to my bed. I would hold him. So I would feed him and I'll hold him in my arms in a cradle position. And I promised my husband that I'd stay awake.
Oh
And
no.
my husband would wake me up. Several times he'd wake me up and say, "But you fell asleep." And I was like, "Oh no, I fell asleep. I'm sorry." And then he'd stay awake as well. So think about that. You have two parents that are not sleeping,
Yeah.
how counterproductive that is, that you should both be resting. You have a new
Yeah.
baby, you have to look after that baby, and we are both awake because we believe that we cannot keep our baby safe in the bed, and the
Yeah.
baby just will not sleep any other way. So that's how it started. So I started looking up information online. I came across the work of James McKenna, which is, has studied mother and baby co-sleeping for his whole life. So I
Hmm.
learned a lot from him. And then I came across Lindsay Hookway, who's a sleep expert, and she's really brilliant, and she trains people on infant sleep. So I went on her training course because I felt I want the best course out there to
Yeah.
help my baby, because I thought I could fix my baby at that point. I thought I need to fix him. He's broken. He cannot sleep. I need to teach him to sleep. So I'm going to learn from the best. And it was a course for help for working with families. It wasn't a course for parents. It was a course for professionals wanting to work with families. But
Mm.
I invested that money because I thought I don't know what else to do and I have to help him. And then from that, I learned how normal his behavior was and
Yeah.
how my expectations needed changing. It wasn't him that was broken, it was just my expectations of how babies actually sleep
Yeah.
was completely wrong. And I learned so much from that. And then I did go on started working with families and helping families to understand that, to understand what normal biological baby sleep looks like, and how to help families in a developmentally appropriate way
Yeah.
to help their babies to sleep.
And I like that you brought up the biological factor because you look at every other mammalian species and no one's putting their babies to sleep away from them. And
Absolutely.
I think for a lot of moms, I do know mothers who prefer not to have their babies in their bed, not because they feel like it's unsafe, but just because that's what they prefer.
Preference.
But I know for many moms that I talk to, it feels anxiety ridden. Where is my baby? I need my baby close to me, you know?
Absolutely. And I love comparing human mammals to animal mammals because I think we are so similar. And I
Yeah.
think the only difference is the fact that we as humans we have so many messages from outside
Hmm.
telling us what's right and what's wrong. So many experts out there telling us, no, your baby should be doing this or that. And instilling this fear into us. I think there is
Yeah.
so much of external pressure which animals don't have. They don't have people judging or shaming them into their
Right.
choices. They just do what feels instinctual to them. And I think what you said is so right because, for a lot of moms, this is an instinctive behavior. It just feels right. It just feels like I want my baby next to me. I feel less anxious if my baby is right next to me. And I know that's the case for myself. I know that's the case with a lot of mothers I worked with. But I know for other mothers, they don't feel this way, whether it is because of those messages that have been for so long just,
Imposed
feeding
upon
into
us.
this fear that you can't, it's dangerous, or independence, because in the West we value independence so much. But also, some mothers just don't want it. Some mothers just want their own space. They sleep
Yep.
better that way. And that's absolutely fine. And I think everyone should be allowed to and should be encouraged to follow what feels right to them.
Yes.
But they don't. I think in this day and age, everyone, all the internet, social media,
Mm.
there is so much influence and so much pressure from and confusion as well. What is
Yeah.
right? What should I be doing? Is that people don't even know how to follow their instincts. They don't know what is my instincts. How do I follow my instinct? What is right and what is wrong? I don't know.
I So I planned to have a bedside sleeper for my baby. And I had it all set up before he was born and everything. I never planned on having him in a room away from me at all. Like it wasn't even in my awareness. But I didn't necessarily want him in my bed. And in my head, I was like, oh, our bed's too small. Like I need something separate for him on the side.
Yeah.
So the night he was born, his first night, I had him at home. Our first night together, I slept with him here on our recliner, and it was just because it was the only thing that felt right in that night. And it really did. It felt intuitive, it felt instinctual, but it never felt right again after that point. I don't know what it was about that night. So from then on, I had him in the bed like the first week because the bedside sleeper made no sense. I was breastfeeding. I was waking up every 3 seconds to pull him right back into the bed with me. And it made no sense to me. And I felt comfortable with that. And then I seen one post, and then it led me down a rabbit hole of a million posts about how every mother who sleeps with their baby is a horrible mother and we're all going to harm our children. And so then I got scared and I was trying to
Yeah.
force the bedside sleeper and it wasn't working. And finally I decided, kind of like you said, like nothing else is working. This makes no sense. I'm keeping my baby in the bed. Um, what I found was interesting. I felt relieved, first of all, when I found your page because I was like, oh,
Oh.
it makes sense. And I think the first video of yours I might have seen was the cuddle curl video where you explained the
Right.
cuddle
Yeah.
curl. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I'm doing.
You
This is
do.
what I naturally fell into with him when I was thinking, how do I keep him safe? How do I stay aware of where my child is in the bed?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and just keep it comfortable for all of us. And when you said that a lot of moms do that instinctively, I was it just felt good to hear. Like I can listen to my intuition. I'm not just
Yeah.
inherently endangering my child. Like this is normal. So, yeah.
Mhm.
I do want to say thank you for that.
No, you're welcome. And you know what? That's the reason that I do what I do. It is I get a lot of criticism as well. I get lots of, when I post my videos, I get so many comments of people saying
Mhm.
exactly that. That's irresponsible, it's dangerous and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the opposite of dangerous
Yeah.
because the message that I'm putting out there is not just everyone should co-sleep with their babies and it's always safe. It's not that. I don't believe it's always safe
Right.
for everyone, but I
Right.
believe it can be safe. And I believe this message that it's always dangerous, that's the dangerous message, because it leads people to put their babies in much more dangerous situations, like you might have done, like I know I did, like I know so many families get in touch with me and say, I was sleeping with my baby, falling asleep
Mhm.
unsafely. And there is a huge, huge difference between falling asleep accidentally and intentional and planned co-sleeping. Even if you don't know all the rules, even if you don't know
Yeah.
all the safety recommendations, there is something about this instinct to,
Mhm.
when you are being intentional about it. I want to bed share with my baby. You are going to think about risks a
Yeah.
lot more than if you just fell asleep with your baby. Your bed might not be suitable. There might be so many there, and there are risks. I never said there are no risks. There
Right.
are risks, but the majority of risks are modifiable. And
Mhm.
that's what for me is the biggest message, because my message is about, for me it's a priority that people co-sleep safely.
Mhm.
And my whole message, the reason I'm such a strong advocate for co-sleeping is because I want people to avoid co-sleeping accidentally. I want them to
Yeah.
be intentional about it, think about
Mhm.
the risks, because it's very likely going to happen, even if you don't want to. The
Yeah.
majority of people that come to me, they never planned on co-sleeping. It was just
Uh-huh.
their baby decided for them. It
Yeah.
was just one of those things. I was never, I get messages from doctors, from nurses, from paramedics that have seen babies in the most tragic situation, and then they had their own babies.
Mhm.
I get messages from people saying, I was completely against it. I was never going to bed share because I've seen the worst.
Yeah.
But now I understand.
Mhm.
Now it makes sense, because I know that those situations, they happen because there was a hazardous circumstance there. In the
Yeah.
majority of cases, there is a known risk there that could have been avoided.
Yeah.
And that is not to blame the parent, because it's exactly the opposite. The parent doesn't know. The parent is being told that they can't, they are not being educated. They're not
Right.
being told that's how you do it.
Mhm.
Let's prepare your bed safely. This is how you do it. If you feel very tired, bring your baby to your bed, instead of, you're feeling very tired, take your baby to the sofa and fall asleep in an unsafe
Yeah.
space. So
Do you wanna get into some of the risks and some of the benefits that are most prevalent for you?
yeah, I think, the risks, let's talk, there are modifiable and non-modifiable risks. So
Yes.
I always divide them between the risks for the parent, or the recommendations for the parents, the recommendations for the baby, and the recommendations for the sleep space.
Okay.
So for the parent, we always talk about that one of the main things is, which is a risk that is possibly, it's modifiable, but it's obviously a little bit harder to modify, which is if you are a smoker.
Mm.
Smoking, whether, while you're pregnant or after, is not considered, it's not considered safe to bed share with your baby. So if you or your partner smoke, you should not sleep in the same bed. The safest place for your baby is going to be in a separate sleeping surface in the same room. So you still should be in the same room. It's still safer to be in the same room as your baby, but not in the same bed. And even if you stopped bed sharing, then you also have, stopped smoking, you still have, the smoke still stays in the mattress. So it's a
Mm.
we know smoking is a really, really, really big risk for SIDS, and that's regardless of bed sharing. So babies of parents who smoke, they are already a higher risk of SIDS, regardless of whether the parent is bed sharing or not. Now, if
Can I
you're bed
ask
sharing,
if
there are other risks, so that's why it's recommended that you don't also bed share with them.
Can I ask if it's so you said smoke in the mattress. So is that if you're smoking in the home, or is it something that happens physiologically within the body that makes it more risky, regardless
It's
of where
not,
you're
it's
smoking?
regardless of where, even if you don't smoke in the bedroom,
Mhm.
it's in your body, it's in your skin, it's in your hair.
Mhm.
So that we know that even if you're not smoking in the home, even if you have a shower, change clothes, that's not enough. It's not
Mhm.
enough to stop your baby, to reduce the risks of SIDS. So the best place for your baby to sleep is in a mattress for a baby. So not the same mattress as a smoker has been sleeping on. So a separate mattress in the same room, because you still want to monitor your baby. So you want to have that clear mattress, but you want to be able to monitor your baby at all times. So yes, it's still important that they are in the same bedroom. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, yes, unless you stop smoking, and if you, lots of people ask me about e-cigarettes and vapes, and there isn't enough evidence about that. We just don't know enough yet. But what the Lullaby Trust says is that if you start smoking vapes or e-cigarettes, in order to stop smoking uh, standard cigarettes, it's likely to be a lower risk, because we know that there is that the nicotine in cigarettes, even the number of cigarettes that you smoke. So if you smoke only one cigarette a day, the risk of the risk of SIDS is going to be 3 to 4 times, sorry, 2.5 to 4 times uh, the risk of people who don't smoke. Now,
Mhm.
if you smoke 20 cigarettes a day, that risk increases to 8 to 9 times the risk of SIDS. So it's the number of cigarettes that you smoke as well. So it's likely that the risk with vaping or e-cigarettes is going to be smaller, but we just don't know. We haven't got enough evidence at present to say whether that would be okay. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it would be best to stop completely, but it's one of those risks that it's not that straightforward, right? If
Yeah.
you've been a smoker for a long time, you're not going to just stop immediately. So you need to be able, so there are times where, co-sleeping is just not you're not going to be eligible for co-sleeping. And I think it's important to know that as well. And keeping your baby close is still, you still should keep your baby close to monitor them at all times, but there are times where they are going to be safer in a separate surface. So not smoking is the first one. Then obviously no alcohol, no drugs, no medication. So when we talk about drugs, it's not only you know drugs that you how do you call them,
Like recreational.
recreational drugs, but also medication, whether it's prescribed or over the counter medication. If it's medication that makes you drowsy or alter your responsiveness in any way, then that could be a risk to your baby, because obviously you need to be able to be in that light state of sleep at all times, to be able to wake up if your baby needs you. So not being alert, taking any medication that is going to make you to change the way you sleep and make you go to a deeper sleep, that is a risk as well.
And I want to
So
speak to that really quickly
yeah.
because it can be so many things. Like, because I work with herbs a lot. And for me, something I love it even more now that I got pregnant and had a baby because it's so good for anxiety and it's safe during pregnancy and it's safe during breastfeeding. It's lemon balm. It's my favorite herb.
What is it called?
Lemon balm.
Lemon balm.
It's
Okay.
good for so many things, calming the nerves, which what mom can't use that, right?
Yeah.
But when I give it to my partner, he will be asleep in 20 minutes. He will literally be asleep in 20 minutes in the deepest sleep of his life. Like, I
That's
give
so
it to him
interesting.
on plane rides sometimes when he needs to sleep on the plane. It's that intense. And so I would even say, not just like what you would think of as recreational drugs or pharmaceutical drugs, but if you're working with new herbs too, which I know a lot of people who listen to this probably will be, like, if it's your first
Mhm.
time, be cautious with that too, because you don't know how it will interact with you or whoever else is sharing the bed with your baby.
Absolutely, and it might be different from for one person to the other, right? Like you said, for your husband, it has a certain effect. So I
Hmm.
think a lot of it is knowing you. What effect does that have on me, and does it make me feel? Does it make me sleep more, or
Yeah.
does it just make me relax, or does it make me sleep more deeply? And yeah, that's definitely a risk. And a lot of times, with alcohol and drugs, when people talk about, there's you hear that so much on the internet that you're going to roll onto your baby and you're a risk to your baby. It's dangerous. The vast majority of cases where people roll onto their babies, there is intoxication
Mm.
uh, in the picture. There is some sort, either alcohol, drugs, they are intoxicated in some way, or it might be a parent, it might be a different caregiver.
Mm.
So not the mother. In the first 4 months of life, we know that the risk of SIDS is higher. Babies are very vulnerable. So it's advised that they sleep only with the mother for those first 4 months. And a lot of those times when you see parents rolling onto babies, it's a different caregiver. It's either a father or another caregiver that it's not even a parent. And it generally is situations where it's chaotic situations where several family members are sleeping in the same bed. They might not have the adequate space. They might not
Yeah.
have, a separate space for the baby. So they might have children sleeping in bed as well. And right next to the baby. So
Hmm.
they are not really thinking about the risks. And it's not obviously a mom who is sober, who is completely aware of their babies at all time, because we know that our sleep, as new moms, we know that our amygdala changes size. So we are more alert of our baby. We are more aware of dangers.
Hmm.
So we know that it's safer for a mother to sleep with their baby for those first 4 months. Another parent can also sleep. We know that risks increase for caregivers that are not parents. So another parent can sleep with the baby as long as they are aware of all those risks. A lot of the times, it's situations where the baby is put in the middle of the bed between the parents, and the other parent doesn't know. They don't realize that the baby has been moved there. So
Yeah.
if there is another parent sleeping in bed, if you're sleeping as a family, the three of you in bed, the other parent needs to be aware at all times of where the baby is. So I always recommend the mother sleeps with the baby on the opposite side. So don't put the baby in the middle. And if they are to put the baby in the middle, always tell the other parent, baby's here now. Make sure that they know, maybe even to ask them to face the baby instead of having their back to their baby. Because when you're facing your baby, you know where they are. You're more aware of them. There's a lot of sensory exchanges going on there. You can feel them. You can smell them. You can feel
Yeah.
them breathing. So you are more aware of them if you are facing them. So yes, there are higher risks for other caregivers, but if it's intentional,
Hmm.
if that parent is completely aware, they're responsive, they are willing to take care of that baby at night, they're willing to take responsibility for
Yeah.
the night, the caretaking of the baby at night, then that is not going to be a risk. It's not going to increase the risks.
When I came in here to do this, because again, it's like, what is it? 4:30 a.m. right now. So I woke up my husband and was like, okay, I'm going in here now. The baby's here. I gave him a bottle just in case the baby wakes up so you can give him some milk. You know what? I'm gonna peek at them really fast. Give me 1 second.
That's fine. Go for it.
Perfect.
They're fine. So I've just panicked you for a little moment. But you have to remember your baby is 7 months. So, La Leche League, for example, they say that after 4 months, any caregivers can sleep with their baby. James McKenna says the same, that as long as it's a responsive caregiver, that it's, attuned, that is, and if they are sleeping alone with their baby, I think that's a very different situation to when a baby is sleeping in the middle, or you have three parents there. The mother is usually the one who's taking the night caretaking duty. So
Yeah.
the mother might be feeding the baby, or they might be sleeping closely to the baby, and the other parent might not be as attuned to the baby because they know the mother is taking care of the baby.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like they are less, we know that from research. There is a study from Professor Helen Ball where she looks at mothers and fathers sleeping together with their babies, and she looks at breastfeeding and also formula feeding families. And it's very interesting because when the baby is breastfed, the baby is primarily facing the mother is facing the baby. She's curling around the baby in that cuddle curl position that is so natural, so instinctive. And the baby is facing the mother for the majority of the night. Baby is not interested in the father at all. He faces the father for about 5% of the night. Now, in formula feeding families, interestingly, the father is facing the baby for a lot longer, and the baby is also facing the father for, I think, over 20 to 30% of the night. So it's a considerable difference. And for me,
Wow.
that maybe shows that, not only if you're breastfeeding, your baby is more interested in the breast, they just want to, they think breast, they only want to be, they gravitate towards the breast the whole time, which is protective.
Yeah.
If you are formula feeding, if you're bottle feeding, there isn't that relationship with the breast. But also it seems like the father might then take a more active role in looking
Mm-hmm.
after the baby at night. So it might be that if the father is, it might be that the father is also feeding the baby. So they have a bottle, the father also feeds the baby. So they take a more active role. So in a way, that could make that father safer for the baby
Yeah.
because they are more attuned to the baby. They are more involved in that nighttime caretaking of the baby. So I think it's about being aware,
Yeah.
just being, if you're going to do that, just be intentional about it, know where the baby is, never just put the baby in bed without telling your partner.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the best, the biggest tips that I would give for families.
Thank you. And
So, do you want me to carry on with the other risks?
yeah, yeah.
So the other risk that quite similar to the alcohol, drugs, or medication, it would be also sleep deprivation. And sleep deprivation, I think it's a really tricky one because,
Mm-hmm.
if you were extremely sleep deprived, you might be a risk to your baby. But now, what is sleep deprivation, right? Because I think a lot of us consider ourselves sleep deprived. If you have a young baby, you're going to be really, really tired. And I
Yes.
think a lot of babies just think, oh, yes, I am sleep deprived. But when you look at research, being actually really sleep deprived, it means that you haven't slept for 18 to 19 hours. So if you woke up at say 7 a.m., by about 2 a.m., you are still awake. So you've been awake for a very long period,
Mhm.
and you haven't had any more than 4 to 5 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period. So
Mhm.
that would be what research would consider sleep deprivation, to the same extent as being intoxicated. So
Okay.
they compare, it affects your awareness and your performance to the same extent as drinking alcohol.
Wow.
But it's not the same as if you are, for example, you're bed sharing with your baby and sleep is broken because babies wake up all the time, but
Mhm.
you are sleeping your sleep is different to how it used to be. You're not going to that deep sleep, but you are sleeping, you're getting rest. And I think bed sharing allows for you to get more rest a lot of the times. If you have a
Oh,
baby
yeah.
who will not sleep separately from you, bringing them to your bed is going to allow you to have some sleep, even if it's
Mhm.
broken sleep. It's different to not getting any sleep at all, to being awake for several hours and never getting any sleep.
Yeah, there's no way that I would have, I guess I'll say, once I realized I could nurse my baby like laying on my side in bed, oh, my sleep, I still don't feel like I was getting like deep, restful sleep like I would if I was sleeping by myself, but that's the point, and that's protective, and that keeps my baby safe. So
Exactly.
I'm cool with that. But I know I'm getting more sleep than I was when I was waking up, picking him up out of his bedside sleeper, holding him, nursing him, staying up, rocking him back. It was just a whole thing. And now we both go back to sleep nursing, honestly. I just lay there curled around him. He's too big to like really curl around him now, but it's much less of a thing, you know?
And that's why it's so, biologically normal to do
Mhm.
that, because babies can feed in their sleep. So
Yeah.
the whole time, sometimes you hear of parents, oh, but they're sucking the whole time. They're not actually sleeping. They are sleeping. That's how babies sleep. That's
Yeah.
precisely how they sleep. They can't sleep while latched on and suckling. So when you're breastfeeding, you can fall asleep, you can sleep, and your baby can sleep. Of course, it doesn't happen to everyone. Some mothers can't do that. Some mothers get woken up all the time. So if you're not getting any sleep, if that really disturbs you, then you have to think about alternatives, other solutions there that might not work for you. But if you can do that, if you can relax enough to let your baby just help themselves,
Mhm.
I think that's one of the best ways to get some sleep. And even if you are formula feeding, though, I've worked with families before. I've spoken with families on Instagram where they have found solutions where the baby will wake up. Maybe they have the other parent prepare the bottle, or just have the bottle ready in a very efficient way that they will just feed
Mhm.
their baby, and the baby will go back to sleep straight away. They are not lifting them out of a crib,
Mm.
having to feed them, then transferring them again. That's disruptive to their sleep. So we want to minimize all of those disruptions. We want sleep to be as, just sleep if you can, relax, let your baby do what they do biologically. Of course, it doesn't work for everyone, but if it doesn't work, I think you have to just think about what else can you do. For example, when we talk about sleep deprivation, we know that if you are in that state that you're very, very sleep deprived, and you feel that you haven't had any sleep in hours, 18 to
Yeah.
19 hours, you've been awake for a very long period of time, and you feel like you're becoming a danger to your baby. There is a study that recommends that if you sleep, and we know that for postpartum depression as well, if you sleep, if you are able to get 4 to 5 hours of uninterrupted sleep, which I know it's hard, but if you have a partner, a family member, someone who can take the baby for that first part of the night,
Mhm.
and even if they're not sleeping with the baby, even if they might be wearing the baby, they might be just hanging around with the baby while you go to bed early and catch up on that sleep.
Yeah.
Catching up on that sleep is going to help you with postpartum depression, and also help you to get back to that level of performance and awareness that you are no longer a risk to your baby. So
Yes.
I think that's a little tip, that if you're feeling that way, try and get that 4 to 5 hours uninterrupted. And it's not going to happen every night, but if you can sometimes get a family member, a friend, if you haven't got a partner, to look after your baby for a few hours, or even take them out in the morning so you catch up with sleep, lying for a little bit, a little bit longer in the morning. I think that can really help on a one-off basis, just to get back to that level.
I had we had a lot of I think after I don't know what it is. Maybe you can confirm this or not, but do we like adjust to the lack of consecutive hours of sleep after a while? Cuz it's I know in the beginning I had a lot of mornings where I would have Ray, my husband, I would have him wake up with the baby and take him so I could keep sleeping because I was so tired, but it doesn't really happen anymore. I feel like
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's because I started.
I think that's very probable. I've slept with my babies for 6 years now, and I just feel that for me it's just become normal to sleep
Mhm.
this way. And I think we adapt to it. I think we adapt to sleep differently. I don't know of any studies or anything to confirm that, but from my experience, I would say the same.
And I also like what you said about just understanding the risks. Like before I knew all of this and like intentionally sought out the information, there was nights where I did feel like, oh, I'm so tired. Like there's no way I'm bringing him in the bed because I don't trust myself. And it doesn't happen. It hasn't really happened often, but it was those early weeks where you just got to
Yes.
adjust. And so he would sleep in his little bedside sleeper, and that was just what worked then. It's funny too because I remembered one time I was gonna have some tea before bed, and I was like, no, I'm scared because what if it makes me sleep too good? It's just funny
Yes.
how when you just bring your awareness to something, everything in
Yes.
life has a risk, but when you're aware and intentional about it, I think it really changes the game and it takes it from like something some people would call reckless, which I don't agree with, to something that's very intentional and well thought through and statistically safe.
Exactly, and that's completely true. It is statistically, when we look at research, we know research is very confusing when it comes to co-sleeping because they tend to combine, there is even with the terms co-sleeping, bed sharing, they combine co-sleeping can be unsafe. So when you look at, like I was talking about before, co-sleeping with a baby, co-sleeping could be sleeping, sharing sleep with your baby anywhere. So if you fall asleep
Mhm.
with your baby on a sofa or on a recliner, that is co-sleeping and that is considered unsafe.
Mhm.
Now, when you look at research sometimes they use the term bed sharing, and when you look at the definition, even in the AAP latest report, the definition of bed sharing for them is sleeping on any surface, a couch, a chair, or a bed, but they
Mm,
call it bed sharing. And
yeah.
how can you then combine something that we know is unsafe to something that could be potentially safe? And it is. We have no evidence that when bed sharing is practiced in the absence of hazards, in the absence of the known hazards, that the risks increase in any way. So we have a report from the database of child mortality database in the UK. It's quite recent. I think it's 2023, might be 2022, 23, where they show exactly that data, that the deaths for where co-sleeping was in the happening in the absence of the known hazards, there
Mhm.
were zero cases, none
Mhm.
at all. All of those cases had a known risk factor present. All of them. The
Yeah.
ones that didn't is because they had missing information about the known risk factors. So we don't have any research to prove that bed sharing in the safe conditions, and especially in the way that I talked about in my account, not only the safe space, but you're sleeping in a cuddle crow, you're
Yeah.
intentional, you've planned it. We know that the majority, 60% of co-sleeping deaths happen when co-sleeping is unplanned. So
Mhm.
you've fallen asleep accidentally, 60%, and over 90% of deaths happen with known hazardous situations.
What do you know about, and this is just a random question, but what do you know about? I've heard a lot of people say that in Asia, where co-sleeping is the norm, the SIDS rates are significantly lower, actually. So it's kind of the exact opposite of what we're told here.
Absolutely. We don't know why. We know that in these countries where co-sleeping is the norm, we know that SIDS rates are very, very low. And it might be to do with that, the planning of it. They are intentional about it. That's what they do as a norm. They have a whole generation after generation there of people to support them and show them how to do it. It's
Hmm.
not like we do it here where we are just falling asleep accidentally.
Yeah.
There are obviously risks, but it's not happening in those countries where they're doing it intentionally. So I think that the planning and the intention of it, I think, make a huge, huge difference.
Okay. So that's a big tip. Do you have any other tips other than intentionality? Floor beds. Do you feel like floor beds are necessary?
Absolutely. Well, not a necessity. I think it really helps in
Mhm.
many, many different ways. I think if once your baby is mobile, so for me, I would even do a floor bed from birth.
Yeah.
You sleeping with your baby on a floor bed because your baby is not. I've heard of lots of families where the baby has fallen off. My first baby has fallen off the bed a couple of times. My second baby did as well once, and then I moved straight away to floor bed. With my third, I just went,
Straight
as
to
soon
floor.
as he became mobile. I only didn't go before that because I didn't have the space, but
Mhm.
I would go from birth because you're reducing the risks there of accidental injury or anything happening from
Yeah.
sleeping on an adult bed. But it's not essential. There are other things that you can do, from with a baby who is mobile. So they're going to be, when they start crawling, they might be 5 months on the early side of things, or might be 7, 8, 9 months.
Hmm.
And at this point, they could sleep in the middle between the parents, both parents aware of them, both parents facing the baby. So you could stop the baby falling from the bed in that way. They could still obviously crawl down the bed.
Yeah.
There are bed rails. People sometimes use bed rails. Bed rails is a tricky one. I'm not a huge fan of them because it comes with lots and lots of risks. I think,
Mhm.
there is the risk of entrapment. Baby could get stuck between the mattress in the bed rail or between a bed rail and the headboard, for example. So you need to be careful, choose it appropriately. If you choose, for example, a bed rail with mesh, which is the one that they are the most popular ones because they're
Mhm.
breathable, but mesh can stretch. And if you have a mattress that is not entirely firm on the edges, with the bed rail that stretches, that could create a gap. So I think bed rails, I don't love them, but there are bed rails that can be safe in Asian countries where it's so common to bed share. They have those really tall ones that go all around the bed,
Mhm.
and they have like a stability bar as well between them, so they are very, very stable and sturdy. They won't just create a gap. So as long as there are no gaps, some families do that, just make a rail all around the bed.
Yeah.
um, Another alternative would be a bedside crib that you do DIY yourself, that you make it larger for a baby who is more mobile, and
Mm.
just kind of take the side off your normal full size crib. So
Yeah.
lots of families do that to make the bedside crib last longer. But I would definitely, as a tip, I would say floor beds. I think they are brilliant.
Yeah.
I've used them for a long time, and I think not only for co-sleeping more safely, but also if you are looking at independence, if you want your baby to one day sleep more independently, I think floor beds can really, really help with that sense of independence. My baby, I think he was 6 months, just over 6 months when I introduced the floor bed to him. He
Mhm.
loved it. He absolutely loved it. And he still does that. We say, let's go to bed. He just gets into bed himself. He
Aw.
knows that his bed. He goes lie down on the bed. And, I think he gives them that sense of independence, of just knowing that that's their bed. And as another tip, I something that has worked for me, it doesn't need to be that way. It can be whatever works for your family, your circumstances. But for me, it's always worked to, if you have the privilege to have a separate bedroom for your baby, I've always done a floor bed for my baby in his bedroom,
Mhm.
and then I would sleep with my baby there, and I would
Mhm.
still have my bedroom with my husband separately. So we still had, a lot of people worry about that, right? A lot of people worry about relationship, and I
Mm.
don't think it has to affect your relationship. For me, a relationship between a couple goes much beyond the bedroom and the bed.
Right, right, right.
There's so many ways to connect. Of course, it's lovely to fall asleep with your partner and kind of have those evening cuddles. It's lovely, and I miss that for sure. And we haven't done that for a long time now. We still spend time together in the evenings. We watch a movie in the evenings, but
Mhm.
I'm always aware that I have to go back to the baby. So it changes. It definitely changes things. But I think you can create other ways to be intimate and to
Absolutely.
and to have affection. It doesn't need to be restricted to the bedroom. But
Right.
we have done that. We have our separate bedroom, so we spend time in the evening there. Sometimes we watch a movie there in our bedroom, and it's our bedroom. It's just for us to sleep, and our boys have their separate bedrooms, and
Mhm.
we sleep. When my baby wakes up, I go to the baby. My husband goes to sleep with the boys, and that's how we do it. We've always done it that way, and it's worked that way for us.
Nice.
And I think it's all about that, just knowing, it's whatever works for you, whatever gets you the most sleep. It doesn't, I think this thing with having so many rules that, oh, it's
Yeah.
going to affect their independence, we have no evidence in research that it affects. In fact, research shows that babies who have always co-slept from the start, they actually have better social independence,
Mhm.
and they are more self-reliant as well, so they're better at things like getting dressed by themselves, and just doing things by themselves, and also more socially independently, making friends by themselves. So we
Interesting.
have a little bit of evidence on that. There is no evidence that they are less independent in the future. They all want independence, and they all end up sleeping independently in the future. It does take a little bit longer,
Mhm.
but for me, I see it as this is the norm. This is how they should sleep. We are just trying to change how babies sleep to suit what we need, because
Mhm.
obviously parents need to go back to work. They have no support. So families want their babies to sleep more independently early for that reason. But actually the way that babies sleep biologically is they don't sleep independently until much much later. We know that from research. We know that until at least 18 months, if not longer.
Mhm.
There isn't a lot of research for after 18 months. There is one study I'm aware of for 24 months, and babies are still waking up a couple of times a night at 24 months.
Yeah.
So those first 2 to 3 years of life, they need us a lot. And that's the
Mhm.
reality that a lot of us don't want to see. It's hard, but
Yeah.
it's just normal.
And baby cuddles, I mean, yeah, I don't really cuddle with Ray in bed so much anymore, but I'm snuggling with my baby all night and I love that. Like
I love it.
it's
And it goes
not
so
like this
fast.
it's not like I'm never gonna we'll get that back once he's in his own bed eventually, but right now he's small and he's only gonna be small for so long and I want all the snuggles that I can get.
That's my view as well. And now I have two older boys, and I know it changes. They don't want to sleep with me anymore. I don't get those snuggles, and I miss it. I tell my husband, because my husband sleeps with my middle one now only wants my husband. He doesn't want me anymore. And if he
Mhm.
does wake up in the night, which is very rare, he's 3 years old, he if I go, he doesn't want me. And I say to my
Oh.
husband, I want to sleep with him. Why doesn't he want me anymore? I really want to sleep with him. So it goes really fast. It goes really fast. And now that I know that my last baby is my last baby,
Uh-huh.
it just feels like this is such a short period. It feels long. It feels
Yeah.
like a really long time. Okay, I've been doing that for 6 years. I've been sleeping with my baby for six years. But in the grand scheme of things, they are only little for a very short period of time, and I think they need us. They
Yeah.
need us, and hopefully, I think it's hard for a lot of, especially men, to understand. I know that, and I say that because I've had so many moms get
Mm.
in touch with me saying, I really want to sleep with my baby. It feels instinctual to me, but my husband will not accept it. My husband worries about. So I think a lot of men worry about that.
Oh yeah.
They worry about, is that going to affect our relationship? And I think it's normal for them to worry about that, but I think it's important to have that conversation and to keep that conversation open and try to connect in other ways, because of course it's going to change. And I think it's important to remember, it's not the bed sharing, the co-sleeping necessarily, that is changing your relationship. It's having a baby.
Right, that's what I'm thinking as you're saying that. I'm like, I don't think it's the sleeping in the bed that changes. Everything changes.
Having a baby changes things, and that's the hard reality that people don't want to know, but it does. It changes things, and we want things not to change. We want things to be back to how they were before, but it's not going to be back ever. You have a
That's
baby now, you have a
right.
child, they're always going to have them.
Always. Well, thank you so much. I know that you mentioned a course earlier. Do you want to like tell people a little bit about that and where they could find you for more
Definitely.
information?
Yes, so Happy Co-Sleeper. I'm on Instagram. I have a Facebook group as well. So if anyone wants the peer-to-peer support, I think we have almost 150,000 people in the Facebook group, and I
Mhm.
have about 30 moderators there. They answer questions, so they can really help you with any kind of day-to-day questions that you have. I post lots of free information on Instagram, and I also have a free checklist that you can get on
Mm.
my Instagram, my link in bio. There is a free checklist with all the main requirements, the basic requirements for co-sleeping, to know that if you or your baby are eligible for co-sleeping, it's all there. And if you want more detail, I've just launched my co-sleeping revolution course, which is a really, really comprehensive course on co-sleeping. It's got 10 modules on everything. So it's got the safety aspect of things, comfort, what to dress,
Mm.
then all how to prepare your space safely. So I go through bed rails, floor beds, all the baby proofing stuff to make sure your space is perfectly set up for bed sharing. And then lots of tips and tricks, all the stuff that I accumulated over the years for
Yeah.
how to travel with a baby, how to co-sleep with a baby and a toddler,
Mm.
everything that you can think about twins, um, anything is there. So co-sleeping when you're sick or your baby is sick, everything that you can think about is in that course. I have lots of bonuses. I've got lots of visuals of how co-sleeping looks like in real life. So I post lots of
Mhm.
that on Instagram. But in the course, I've got a gallery of my videos of co-sleeping with my baby at each age. So it's very accessible there by age. We want to see how
Yeah.
co-sleeping looks like at each different age. I think people really love, oh, is that how it looks like? Because sometimes people are
Mhm.
doing it and they go, I've never seen people doing it. So it's
Yeah.
all there. I've got photos of other people in all showing all the different positions and all the different ways real people co-sleep.
Mhm.
Um, and I also have my Instagram posts. They're all listed and searchable. There's an A to Z. So if you want to find information quickly, it's very easily accessible as well.
The
So
Happy
everything
Co-Sleeper.
you need is so just Happy Co-Sleeper at Happy Co-Sleeper. And the course is just happycosleeper.com/revolution, or it's also in my Instagram link in bio as well.
Okay, and I'll make sure to link all of that in the description for people to find you easily.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for
No
all of the
problem.
information. I know this is going to help people because I've had people reach out to me. One mom really, really panicked actually that her baby wouldn't sleep without her. And I sent her your page. So I'm hoping this reaches whoever it needs to reach and get them some good
Thank you.
sleep.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for waking up at 4 a.m. to talk to me. I'm so impressed. I'm so grateful that, I couldn't do that. So I really appreciate that you are doing this work and spreading the word.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please remember to rate and review this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and comment. I really, really want to hear from you. I want to know what you think, if you relate, all the things. Once again, thank you so much for your time, and I will catch you in the next episode.